of cyber warfare from Russia. It follows warnings from experts last night who urged Britain to remain firm and stand strong against Vladimir Putin's threat. Shadow Levelling Up Secretary Kevin Hollinrake told GBNews Labour need to increase the UK's defence spending now.
One of the highest spenders in NATO, constantly have been, but we recognise there's growing threats around the world, and that's why we committed to increase defence spending to 2.5% of GDP by 2030. And that is a commitment not matched by the Labour government. They've made some kind of general commitment to get there at some point in the future, but the threat is now, and we should bolster our defences now. We made that firm commitment. Labour should do the same.
In other news, the Justice Secretary says the state should never offer death as a service. Shabana Mahmood made the comments in a strongly worded intervention over the assisted dying bill ahead of an historic Commons vote next week. In a letter to constituents, Ms Mahmood said she was profoundly concerned by the legislation, not just for religious reasons, but because it could create a slippery slope towards death on demand. She's previously made clear she would vote against the bill alongside Health Secretary Wes Streeting, who faced a backlash after suggesting the changes would cost the NHS more. A group of faith leaders have signed a letter opposing the bill ahead of its debate by MPs. The Prime Minister's declined to say whether he will back the bill, arguing that he doesn't want to pressure MPs. Chief Executive of Labour Together, Jonathan Ashworth, told GBNews it's not a good idea.
There were two things that would concern me. First of all, I just worry about the pressure that this would put people who are in the most desperate of circumstances, the pressure they would be under. I just think it would change societal norms about that, and I'm not sure that we're ready for that as a society. And secondly, we all know that end-of-life care in the country is just not satisfactory. The hospice movement are phenomenal, but they have been underfunded for years. And I just don't want people feeling that they are a burden or that they feel their time is up and they have to make these decisions.
In other news, Energy Secretary Ed Miliband has called a financial package for developing nations a critical 11th hour deal at the 11th hour for the climate as the United Nations Environmental Conference drew to a close. Delegates at the COP29 in Azerbaijan agreed a new climate finance target. They pledged $300 billion a year, that's £239.5 billion, to help poorer countries deal with the impacts of climate change, with rich countries leading the payments. It was feared the conference would collapse after some of the poorest nations had walked out of those talks. US President Joe Biden said that while substantial work remained to be done, the conference had set an ambitious international climate finance goal. However, the African group of negotiators described it as too little too late. Now, police say a man is fighting for his life after a stabbing on Westminster Bridge. Officers were called to the scene at around 10:45 this morning to reports of a fight and found a man with a stab injury. He was taken to hospital in critical condition. 3 people have been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder and another has been arrested on suspicion of a fray. The Met Police says 2 of those arrested were taken to hospital with minor facial injuries. It's understood that incident is not being treated as terror-related. And Novak Djokovic has appointed Andy Murray to coach him into and through the Australian Open. Announcing the collaboration, Djokovic said he's excited to have one of his greatest rivals on the same side of the net. In a video posted on X, the Serbian said, "We had some of the most epic battles in our sport. I thought our story was over, but it turns out it has one final chapter." 3-time Grand Slam champion Andy Murray retired in August after exiting the men's doubles at the Paris Games. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. It's back to Darren.
Thanks very much, Tatiana. We're going to get stuck into today's topics now. Storm Bert battered Britain. Strong winds and heavy snow across many parts of the UK are evident for all to see. The multi-hazard weather event has left 3 dead and, in a spate of weather-related road incidents and thousands of power without home, it's looking pretty serious indeed. And today, dozens of weather warnings remain in place as heavy rain and thawing snow could lead to floods. Now, that's why people across the United Kingdom are being urged to stay home as the weather causes travel delays across the UK. So good luck to Darren Grimes getting home, I think, is the moral to that story. Joining me now to discuss this is the meteorologist John Hammond. John, thank you very much for your company. How bad has this been as far as storms go?
Pretty bad, Darren. Good afternoon. Yeah, a concoction, as we've just seen, a concoction of impactful weather. The snow footage which you just showed was all from yesterday. Nobody across the country now is experiencing fresh snowfall because the temperatures have soared over the last 24 hours. You know, this time yesterday, some places were close to freezing. At the moment, some places, would you believe, are as high as 17 or 18 degrees. And it's that thrust of very warm and moist air which has produced all the rainfall which we've seen, the flooding rains in some places, and it's spun up this deep storm which has generated the violent winds as well. So at the moment, the worst of the rain which is falling out of the sky stretches from southwest England up through the West Country into parts of the Midlands. That's all going to head its way down to the southeast, which is dry at the moment, but another deluge later on today. So concerns there about the amount of rain which we're going to see and perhaps knock-on effects on flooding for some river systems. In terms of wind, it's still very windy across the southern half of the UK with gusts as high as 60 or 70 miles an hour in the most exposed places. Some places earlier on today had their highest gust in over 30 years. That's the measure of how severe it is. The worst of the wind and the rain will ease off later on tonight, Darren, but actually a final fling from Storm Bert will occur tomorrow across the other end of the UK, the northwest, so parts of Scotland. Again, will turn very windy tomorrow. We could see gusts in excess of 60 miles an hour before eventually Bert runs out of steam and things do settle down for a time at least as we go through next week. But that seems some way off, particularly if you're being affected by flooding or if you've had a power cut or if trees have come down in your area. So I think the main message is Bert hasn't finished with us yet, certainly through the rest of the day, and for some places into tomorrow, we'll see further impacts from the wind and the rain.
I mean, John, one thing that we hear from, we're talking a lot on this channel about farmers, and one thing farmers tell me is that they really struggled with the summer. They had a bad winter last year. And that's obviously impacted their harvest. What's this winter going to look like? Can we already tell that we're in for, I'm not asking you to be Mystic Meg, but are we looking at, you know, a stormy, sort of snowy winter?
Well, yeah, I'm not going to be Mystic Meg. I mean, certainly there are indications that through next week, actually, we're going to go into a quieter period. And actually, in the weeks up to this event, up to Bert hitting us, it's been relatively quiet and dry. And that's been a blessing, actually, Darren, because river systems haven't been quite as high as they might normally be at this time of year. The ground hasn't been quite as saturated. So although we are seeing flooding in some places, as you're seeing flash flooding in some places, especially across Ireland, generally speaking, rivers aren't quite as high as they might otherwise be at this time of year. But given that some places have had 100 millimetres of rain in the last 24 hours, rivers will continue to rise. We've got scores of flood warnings. Now, if that gets escalated to severe flood warning territory, then I think the risk becomes rather more meaningful for many places across parts of Britain which are downstream from where the rainfall actually fell. So if you go onto the Environment Agency website, for example, you'll see that most of the flood warnings are across parts of the Midlands down through the West Country, not necessarily where most of the rain fell, but all that rain has been funneling down through the river systems, and there's a lag between rain falling and all that water getting out to sea. So certainly for the next 2 or 3 days, it'll take a while for those floodwaters to eventually recede.
All right, well, fun times ahead, Johnny. Thank you very much for that analysis. That's the meteorologist John Hammond there on Storm Bert. Now, another storm is brewing. Sir Keir Starmer has been left bracing for a humiliating Commons debate after more than 700,000 people have signed a petition to hold yet another general election. Despite going to the polls 5 times in the last 10 years, hundreds of thousands want another election after a petition was launched accusing the Prime Minister of reversing on his manifesto commitments. Now, currently, the poll is at 705,407 signatures. It's gone up now. It continues going up. We can't keep up. Well, joining me to discuss this is the GBNews political correspondent, Olivia Utley. I mean, Olivia, you know, I don't want to break people's hearts, but this chance to have no impact. But it does show a clear sign of major upset throughout the country at a perceived lack of commitment to your manifesto that you just stood in July. Well,
exactly. I mean, the first thing to say, as you say, Darren, is that this isn't actually going to have any impact. We're not about to see another general election called. These petitions do the rounds every now and then, and because of social media, they do get quite a lot of traction. But 700,000 odd signatures and rising all the time, just 6 months after a general election, isn't a good look for the Prime Minister, and he won't be happy about it. And it's not the only sign in the polls that Labour isn't doing as well as they would have hoped. Since the election, Labour has lost 80% of the council by-elections that it's fought, which is, almost unprecedented. And if you compare the polls for Keir Starmer's popularity now compared to where Tony Blair was 6 months after winning the 1997 general election, I mean, it is completely incomparable. Keir Starmer is in the negative rating already, whereas Tony Blair, who, let's remember, won actually a similar-sized majority to Keir Starmer, just 4 seats fewer Keir Starmer won back in July. Obviously, Tony Blair was still riding on a high 6 months after the 97 general election and stayed in power for 3 terms. What people are so upset about, why they're signing this petition, is because they feel as though Keir Starmer has reversed on his manifesto commitments. The obvious one that's being brought up quite a lot is the promise not to raise taxes on working people, by which he defined that as national insurance, VAT or income tax. Well, very technically speaking, you could argue that he has stuck to that, but he has raised national insurance, not on individuals, but on companies. And yes, that doesn't have a direct effect on people's paychecks, but of course what's happening is those companies are choosing to hire fewer people, or in some cases make cuts to their workforce in order to pay for that excess national insurance. So lots of people feel as though that is a bit of a reversal on the manifesto commitment. The other place where people are obviously really unhappy is winter fuel payments. And we haven't talked about that in a while, but, as we've seen over the last few days, winter is hitting hard. Yeah. Ofgem have put up its prices again. The price cap has gone up again. It's likely to be about over £100 more per year for the average energy bill next year than last year. And now, of course, there are thousands of pensioners who won't be receiving the winter fuel payments that they otherwise would have received. There's a lot of anger about that in the country at large too. What will happen with this petition? Well, once a petition gets to around 100,000 signatures, and obviously we're way ahead of that now, there is normally by precedent a debate in the House of Commons. That'll probably be in Westminster Hall, which is a much more minor chamber, not like the floor of the House of Commons. But it will be embarrassing for Keir Starmer, and I have no doubt that we'll be covering it, and so will lots of other news organisations.
Absolutely. All right. Olivia Utley there, our political correspondent. Thank you very much for that analysis. Still joining me on my panel today are Nigel Nelson and Claire Muldoon. Claire, I'll start with you. What I hear more than anything else at the minute, and I'm sure you get this too, is what can we do? How can we make clear our dismay at the state of the nation and the way in which things are going and the complete reversal on manifesto commitments and all the rest of it, and the sheer frustration? How do people channel that? Is this petition, do you think, a sort of it's allowing people to vehicle their frustration and show their dismay because they're worried that actually if they take to the streets, goodness only knows what will happen to them?
Well, let's hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
What we've got here is an optic that's incredibly bad for Sir Keir Starmer and his government at the moment. And I think the court of public opinion, as we call it, is showing the government, look, we're not happy. And to put that figure of 700,000 people into perspective, combined memberships of both the Reform and the Conservative Party have got fewer than 200,000 members. So we just wonder, I mean, I don't think the Lib Dems are calling for, I've got 500,000 members that are signing this petition. So I think there's definitely buyer's remorse out there of people who did vote in this Labour government and are actually showing, I think because they have gone back on their word. Keir Starmer, the comms from Number 10 have been Horrific. I think that is, Jen, that's not me being political saying that. That's me being a member of the public expecting some good news. There's been nothing, absolutely nothing. The only good news I can see is both the Justice Secretary and the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, are voting against this ridiculous assisted dying bill that's been put through that they will debate in the Houses of Commons next Friday.
We'll talk about that a bit later, so we'll get more of your view on that. But Nigel, I mean, ultimately, this will amount to the square root of NAF for all, if I can put it so bluntly.
That's right.
But it does allow people to make a statement to His Majesty's government of their, well, discontent.
Yeah, and I think one of the things it shows is petitions work. I mean, I think that the last figure I saw there, it had got up in about 10,000 just in the time that we've been talking.
Yeah, it has.
And certainly it's gone up by about 300,000 since I looked at it this morning. So what it means is people at least can show their discontent, can do it through a petition. Almost certainly, it doesn't have to be debated in Parliament, but it almost certainly will be, given the number of people who've done that. I don't think he's broken any manifesto commitments, as Claire said. What has happened is that they boxed themselves into a corner by not raising income tax, VAT or employee national insurance. What's now happened is a lot of individual groups have been hit. Farmers, elderly people, GPs with extra national insurance, and each one wants to make themselves a special case. So you've got that kind of dissatisfaction coming through. It's not a bad idea to have a debate in the House of Commons, so opposition MPs can articulate that dissatisfaction, and one of Keir Starmer's ministers can answer it.
Look, I don't think they should have a general election. I think that would be really destabilising for the whole, one, the economy, and two, for us that live here, because it's very divisive. Politics can be very divisive, as we've seen across the pond, and it's very difficult to actually think. For me, I'm politically homeless. I still don't know who I could vote for in this.
But on that point that Nigel raises there about how they haven't gone back on manifesto commitments, some might argue that that's, sophistry. It's basically saying that actually raising the national insurance on employers feeds through to working people.
Of course it does, and SMEs, and that will directly affect people's ability to be further employed or face redundancy.
So would you accept that Nigel's technically correct?
Well, yes, unfortunately, technically, yes, that's the case. But they have done it through stealth. They've still raised it, and it still will have an impact on the working people. They couldn't even define a working person,
but he did,
let alone a woman.
You know, I remember seeing him stand up at the National Farmers Union, Nigel, and he stood up and he told, what was it, maybe, goodness only knows how many farmers were there, I don't know. But he stood up and he said that we'll be on the side of you, right? There'll be no
many
taxes,
left through the back door.
And then this has happened. That could be a lack of rolling back on a commitment, could it not?
Well, not really. I mean, the farmers are still getting a variety of tax breaks that other people don't get. So, for instance, those who will be paying inheritance tax will be paying it at half the rate of anybody else who had to pay inheritance tax. The point about the farmers there is who you're hitting. Now, I appreciate there's a discrepancy over the figures, the official figures that the Treasury put out, the figures the farmers are putting out. But broadly, what you're trying to hit are landowners who are buying up land for a tax haven. So you're trying to stop that. What we don't know is how many people on the margins of that, how many actual family farms would be affected.
I think that's a crucial point.
It is a crucial point. No, I agree with you.
I really do. And I also...
but one of my figures point to very few farms.
One of my big concerns is where this land will be sold to for the inheritance tax ability to pay, albeit at half the rate. Instead of 40%, it will be 20%, and albeit over a range of 10 years.
Crucial point.
You know, but still, who will that land be sold to? We've got, what's his name? Microsoft?
Bill Gates.
Bill Gates, owning biggest farmer in America. Come on.
All right.
The Chinese.
We'll come back to my panel. Thank you, Nigel. Thank you, Claire. For all the best analysis and opinion on that story and more, you can go to our website. We're at gbnews.com. My friends, you're with me, Darren Grimes, on GB News. We're going to have a little check-in with that election poll. It's on 723,000. That was nice and easy to read out, thank you. Keep it at a round number. It's currently at that, and it's going up. Oh, look, it's gone up already. Loads more coming up. The Prime Minister has declared war on Benefit Britain, promising a blitz on cheats and those who game the system. All of that and more to come. You're with GB News, we're Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Young adults spend a few years living away from home at university, those who go to university, but many then have no choice but to move back in with their parents because of the rising cost of renting.
But is this an excuse, and are Gen Z or Z just being lazy?
I mean, what do you make of it, Debbie? Because we do have to have some sympathy, don't we, in that, you know, rents are very high, it's very hard to get a mortgage. There are issues there.
I think the push towards young people to go to university as well is not necessarily the right thing for a lot of people. And I think people should start work early. These guys leave their universities with a huge amount of debt, no jobs, or huge rent. You know what I mean? It's just ridiculous. So I think we've got to look at the work ethic and start it younger. Because I think it's so easy just to move back with your mum and dad, isn't it?
To speak like a Gen Zer, they would say that, well, it's OK for your generation, you had it easy.
Realistically, that isn't quite that true, because a lot of people then didn't go to university. This is a relatively new thing that everybody goes to university.
I have to say, what strikes me today is that you still have, amongst all these problems, not having enough money, going to university when perhaps you shouldn't be, all these sort of issues, you still get all these people saying, well, I'm going to have a year out.
Yeah, I agree with you entirely. And I think the thing is, they say, oh, it was easy for you, but it wasn't really. We still had to rent places.
But the thing is with this debate, Debbie, is the generation we're talking about, Gen Z, who we're accusing of being lazy, have been raised by our generation.
Yeah.
So what have we done wrong that, if they are lazier, has made them like that?
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Welcome back to the weekend with me, Darren Grimes. Patricia's just written in, and Patricia says, never mind across the pond, Claire. They're not divided like we are. Trump took the lot. We're stuck with dire, unprincipled people who haven't a clue what they are doing. Our country's going downhill, lies are told on everything, and money's been spent like no tomorrow, and we're supposed to have none. Huge amounts going abroad. When are people being left behind and migration is out of control and costing us all a ton? Ashley says, whilst the petition won't get us a general election, it is clear as a message to the Labour Party that the British people have had enough. Hopefully it opens their eyes at the very least. Now, thank you for those views. Keep them coming in. The Prime Minister has declared war on Benefit Britain. In the Mail on Sunday, Sir Keir Starmer promised sweeping changes to try to tame the 137 billion quid bill for welfare benefits, including a blitz on cheats and those who game the system, vowing no more to business as usual. Well, let's see what my panel make of this. Nigel and Claire, obviously still with me in the studio now. Nigel, could you just briefly outline what measures he's putting in place and whether or not, in your view, this is any different to what we were promised under 14 years of Tory government?
Well, yes. I mean, the idea is that it's going to be a crackdown on cheats and fraudsters who take money that they shouldn't have.
How?
Well, the idea is you look in their bank accounts, and one of the powers will be to look into bank accounts. The full details are coming out when the Welfare Secretary makes a statement. A white paper, in fact, is going to be produced this coming week. So we'll have to wait to see the actual detail, but the kind of things there are clamping down on fraudsters. Especially young people, if they decide not to work but they're perfectly capable of working, then what will happen there is that they will lose benefits. And because mental health has become a major problem, the idea is that you will have work coaches in mental health clinics to see if people who go in there actually can work despite the conditions they've got. Then you've got the wider problem, which is NHS waiting lists, so 7 million people waiting for treatment. That means you've got 4 million claiming sickness benefits. If you can get those waiting lists down, that's part of the 10-year NHS reform plan. That will get other people back to work.
OK, yeah, it's a huge bill. Claire, this idea, right, of HMRC or the Department of Work and Pensions being able to snoop in your bank account, it doesn't sit well with me, because I worry that actually ultimately, eventually, are we going to, if you post something naughty online, could that be a way to clamp down? I'm sorry, this is just where my mind is going at the minute.
I think it's crucial that people have confidentiality and complete control over something as confidential as their bank accounts. If you have to get something like universal credit or housing benefit, whatever it's called now, or council tax support, part of that is showing your bank statements for a specific period of time. That's fine, because that then shows income and expenditure and actually shows the deficit and the need for the benefit. However, I would take it one step further. I think the housing system and the housing crisis in this country is at the root of everything, because you've got lack of family values, you've got disparate families who cannot live together for X, Y or Z reasons, and if they're on benefits, then they will have to apply for single person's living allowance or a 2-bedroom flat if it's a single parent or a couple, and that will then extend to more benefits that had to be paid. But I would actually say, we've got the statistics are clear. There's a third now of people with ADHD, which has gone up 42,000% or something. With disability claims, there's a third with mental health issues on that. I would despair, actually, at that statistic, because I think it actually minimises those with grave mental health issues that can sometimes be overlooked. However, back to the housing crisis, if families were actually together, if families were actually were able to live together, then I think we would see a lot less people claiming benefits.
Because Nigel...
not even withstanding the amount of immigrants we've got coming in.
Yeah, I mean, how do they track it if money's been sent overseas, for example, right? How would they do that in order to clamp down on use of that way of sending money back home or whatever
Charity starts at home, that's all I'll say.
Well, indeed. But they've also said, Nigel, that young people will lose their benefits if they refuse to work and take up training opportunities. This is from Liz Kendall, who claims that they have a responsibility to engage with skills or employment programmes. Why do you think we have so many young people who just feel that they basically would rather just not do anything?
Yeah, I find that surprising. I would have thought that people would actually prefer to work than not to work. But if we have a situation where people want to live on benefits, if we have got this sort of shameless society coming back, then it's quite right to crack down on it. So the question is hitting the right people. I think Claire makes a good point there. You've got to hit the right people. It's got to be somebody who is refusing to work who can, rather than somebody who can't work being penalised. And it's getting the balance right is a difficult one. You mentioned the Tories. In fairness, they did try over 14 years. It didn't work. Let's see if these new proposals do a better job.
I mean, they would argue universal credit did work, right, without reform in and of itself.
I think universal credit does work. I mean, I'm not against universal credit.
But the cut-off is so steep, it's not fathomable for someone who needs the benefit.
It may need some reforms to go with it to actually make it work better, yeah.
OK, all right. Nigel, Claire, thank you very much for that. We'll come back to you in just a second. You're with me, my friends. Darren Grimes on GB News. We're going to have a little look at this election poll, where we're at now. Drum roll, please. 740,000 of you. Look at that, going up and up and up. Plenty more to come, my friends, on today's show. Not just that poll. Look, it had gone up there already. It's amazing. First of all, though, we're going to get you news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Darren, thank you very much and good afternoon. Well, the top story, Storm Bert has brought more than 80% of November's average monthly rainfall in less than 48 hours. More than 200 flood alerts are in place in the UK as it continues to sweep across the country. The Met Office says there's potential for fast-flowing or deep floodwater to cause danger to life today after heavy downpours and strong winds have battered much of the country. A major incident has been declared in parts of South Wales due to river flooding. Homes and cars are reportedly underwater there, and a man has been rescued from a flooded car. A yellow wind warning has come into force for large parts of England, with gusts of up to 65 miles per hour expected in some places. A man died yesterday morning after a tree fell onto his car due to the weather conditions. 2 others died yesterday in crashes on the roads due to the stormy weather, one in West Yorkshire, another in Northamptonshire, although it's not known if they were directly related to the conditions. Work and Pensions Secretary Liz Kendall says NATO countries are involved in a hidden cyber war with Russia. That as the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster will warn that Russia could turn the lights off and won't think twice about exploiting defence gaps in the UK. Pat McFadden is expected to give the warning to NATO members next week. In a speech, he'll urge countries to bolster cybersecurity and not underestimate the threat of cyber warfare from Russia. It follows warnings from experts last night who urge Britain to remain firm and stand strong against Vladimir Putin's threats. And the Justice Secretary says the state should never offer death as a service. Shabana Mahmood made those comments in a strongly worded intervention over the assisted dying bill ahead of an historic Commons vote next week. In a letter to constituents, Ms Mahmood said she was profoundly concerned by the legislation, not just for religious reasons, but because it could create a slippery slope towards death on demand. She's previously made clear she would vote against the bill alongside Health Secretary Wes Streeting, who faced a backlash after suggesting the changes would cost the NHS more. A group of faith leaders have signed a letter opposing that bill ahead of its debate by MPs. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer's declined to say whether he will back the bill, arguing he doesn't want to pressure MPs. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Tatiana. Now remember, you can let me know your thoughts on all of the stories we've been discussing today by visiting gbnews.com/your say. Join the conversation there. Loads more coming up on the show. Should you be ashamed to be posh? Jacob Rees-Mogg's wife says she hates how posh he sounds. But should someone ever be ashamed of what they sound like? And I suppose as a consequence of their upbringing as well. All of that and more to come. I'm Darren Grimes and you're with GB News. We're Britain's news channel.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Storm Bert continues to give strong winds, outbreaks of heavy rain across parts of the country, and it's exceptionally mild for some as well, 16, 17 Celsius this Sunday morning. Bert sat to the northwest, tightly packed isobars indicating strong winds across the country and heavy rain in places too. Rain particularly heavy across southwest England into parts of Wales, the Midlands, into eastern England as well through the day ahead. To the southeast of this, some bright or sunny spells behind it as well. Some dry interludes before we see blustery showers across Northern Ireland, northwest Scotland. Here the winds gusting by the afternoon 60, 70 miles an hour. Elsewhere as well, gusts of 50, 60 miles an hour possible. So an unsettled afternoon to come and temperatures well above where they should be for the time of year. So let's take a look at that rain for the evening time. For those travelling, there could be some local disruption across central southern parts of England and Wales. Flooding becoming a real concern. Brighter skies across parts of Northern Ireland, Scotland as the sun sets here, clearer spells, and then a mixture of blustery showers, strong winds across the northwest of Scotland. Temperatures here 9 to 11 Celsius. Stays wet and windy into the evening and overnight as well. This weather system only slowly pushes its way southeastwards, transferring into southeast England during the early hours. Elsewhere, blustery showers continue to move in as the storm system only slowly pushes its way eastwards, and showers still pretty relentless across the northwest. Temperatures coming down here overnight, 6 or 7 Celsius, still mild in the south, 9 or 10 degrees. Weather system gives some rain initially across southeast England. This starts to clear away, it brightens up, but a blustery day for everyone. Sunny spells, scattered showers. Showers most frequent across the north and the west, and some colder air starting to return across Scotland. We'll see the showers turn back to snow here. Temperatures 6, 7 degrees. Cooler in the south as well, highs of 11.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the weekend with me, Darren Grimes. Now, a lot of you have been getting in touch on that next story that we're going to be discussing. And Helen says, Mrs. Rees-Mogg, was she really saying she can't stand her husband? And after 6 kids, who can blame her? Might be a good point. Right, now, the question we're asking is, should you be ashamed to be posh? Well, Helena Rees-Mogg, the wife of the former MP Jacob Rees-Mogg, says she hates how ludicrously posh her voice sounds on camera. But should someone ever be ashamed of what they sound like? Well, let's see what my panel make of this. Nigel and Claire still with me in the studio. Nigel, give us a brief overview. This is happening on Disney, this programme that's clearly geared toward, well, it's Discovery that are putting it out, but it's clearly geared toward an American audience, you know, looking at posh, twee English people.
Yes, you can't get much posher than Jacob and his family.
Yes. And it's almost like a parody of Englishness, you know. Do you think, actually, they'll be tuning in for that very reason, that they do sound how it's sort of that received pronunciation?
That's the idea. I mean, one of the points of the series was that they were following Jacob around while he was campaigning during the general election. So the idea was to show a posh MP, and of course he lost his seat. So they had to slightly skew the series on the basis of that. When it comes down to Helena being worried about her voice, no, of course people shouldn't be upset about that. That the she can't change her upbringing. I get a lot on social media where people find my voice annoying. I think probably it's just part of a pile-on to say they don't like my opinions either, but it's one of those things. But there's not much you can do about it unless Helena wants to go off for voice training, and I'm sure she doesn't.
Well, I get told something along the lines of, Claire, that my mother must have had it away with Ant and Dec.
I'm a celebrity, get me out of here. I mean, what can I say? We've had what's the Channel 4 series? Bogglebox?
Gogglebox.
Gogglebox.
Yeah.
Well, now we've got Mugglebox. And I think it's going to be great. And that's a sound bite, literally, from Jacob Rees-Mogg's wife, Helena. And she said, look, but she feels that she sounds incredibly posh, but I think it's part of her identity. As Nigel quite rightly said, she can't change her upbringing. And there is an authoritative tone, you know, to someone who does sound posher than someone else. But if we take a step back and we think of call centres, the Newcastle accent, the Belfast accent, and indeed the Glaswegian accent are all very good for call centres, and a lot of big companies use them because they're trusted voices.
Yes.
There's a lot to be said with a good voice. There's a lot to be said for a regional accent. There's a lot to be said as well that sometimes people need strap lines and words coming up on the screen, subtitles in order for people to understand. And I would say, sorry, carry on.
Well, I was going to say though, Claire, I mean, have you ever yourself had someone, at least as you've perceived it, look down on you for having an accent? As in, you're not automatically assumed to be working class because of your accent?
I've not found that personally, but people look down on me anyway for a myriad of reasons on social media and out with that, because that's the way that people are. They want to get at you. So what can they do? They can. The way you present, they will get at you for that, and also the way that you sound. And it's just a perceived, I would say, maybe inverted snobbery, or even just a perceived critique on the person.
Have you been,
which is very
if I can ask a
unfair.
very impertinent question, would you have counselled your kids to sort of try and speak more?
Well, no, I do.
Yeah.
I mean, because I hate people who do not pronounce the words that are written. Like the London glottal stop, for instance, I can't stand. Having 4 kids been born and brought up here. Kettle, bottle. Well, they're not as bad as that. But the one in Australia today, she said, have you seen Gladiator? Yeah. And I went, pardon, do you want to ask me that question again? And so the way that she did it was, well, the new Ridley Scott movie with Denzel Washington, the part 2 of the first one. Have you seen that?
What about your kids, Nigel? I mean, would you be counselling them to speak more clearly, as you could probably put it?
Yeah, I mean, I think I get on with Claire on this one, that to speak properly, it doesn't matter about accent or anything like that. The important thing is to be clear. People have to be able to understand what you're doing, so you need clear thinking before you actually speak. And the idea that you actually pronounce the letters in a word and don't get rid of them. I mean, I get very irritated by young people who say like a lot, like this, like that, whatever.
Or worse, they go gym. Excuse me? You go to the gym.
Yeah.
Cutting out words.
So it's things like that. It's actually speaking properly, but properly in the sense of making yourself understood, because I do appreciate language is going to change over a period of time. There are certain words we can't use now that we could have used 20 years ago.
But interestingly, regional accents are on the decline because of the fact, I would put this down to the Netflixization of the English language. Okay. You know, and the way in which we're all...
Chaucer wrote in a completely different way from Shakespeare. Shakespeare wrote in a completely different way from the way we speak today.
Yes.
Languages evolve, but my concern is the fact that kids now speak text-speak, or they don't even call them text now, Snapchat, they snap each other. And it's this horrific...
It's lazy.
It's homogenisation of the English language that is actually dissipating and disappearing to a certain extent. And they speak... It's almost... They'll be grunting next. That's the way they're going to... That's the way they're going to go. And they'll be able to understand each other from a grunt.
But you wouldn't counsel against Helena speaking less posh, I mean, how could she possibly do that?
Well, that's right. I mean, that's why obviously what's happened is that she doesn't, I mean, unlike Jacob, she doesn't do TV very much.
Yes.
And so suddenly she's confronted with herself on TV, can actually hear herself as others hear her. But she shouldn't be ashamed about it. I mean, that's just the way she is. And if anyone criticises her, then she just brushes off.
Yeah. Janie says, if Jacob Rees-Mogg read me a book, I'm saying book, should I say book? I'd nod off. I love the way he talks, very calming and soothing.
Yeah. If I read at Mass, people will say, oh, you've read really well, Claire. And I went, well, thank you very much, but I certainly don't sound like that when I was getting the kids out to school at 6:30 in the morning. The guttural Glaswegian would come out. So it's horses for courses, but I think it's our duty to speak properly.
Yeah. All right.
The rain in Spain
no
stays
pressure.
mightily on the plane.
No pressure, no pressure. Thank you very much to my panel there. You're with me, Darren Grimes, on GB News. We'll have a check-in on that general election poll right now. What's it saying? 765,000. Wow, wow, wow. Lots more coming up on the show today, my friends, as football is taken over by board games and science fiction in opinion polls. Is Britain becoming a nation of nerds? All of that and more to come. You're with GB News, we're Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's a time for the vegan community to get together, as well as an opportunity for non-vegans to try going plant-based.
Well, joining us now is from her delicious hummus, and we both love hummus, this is a great thing. This is the founder of Chickpea, Hannah McCollum. Hannah, lovely to meet you. And you've brought in some of your beautiful products in front of you here, so can you talk us through some of them?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a range of chilled hummus, and then latest to the range of a new ambient snack pot, which is a fridgeless hummus that doesn't require refrigeration. But I started Chickpea because of my love for hummus, but also sustainability and reducing food waste and encouraging people to be more plant-based without saying go vegan.
Does normal, say, traditional hummus have anything that's not vegan appropriate in it?
Not really.
No,
I think
it's always chickpeas, olive oil, maybe some other bits.
Yeah, lemon juice, aquafibre or water to help with consistency, garlic, and rapeseed oil or olive oil.
And there's a bit of a misconception about veganism that I hear a lot, where people say, look, I'm not a vegan, I love my steaks, I'll just get out of there now. But there's a misconception that you don't get the protein, you don't get the fats, and you're kind of just eating processed salads and, fake meat and things. But that's not quite the case, especially with chickpeas, right?
Yeah, I think protein is really important, and actually a lot of people think I need a certain amount of fish every week or meat, but actually a lot of the fish and meat that you're eating are eating higher protein foods, so algae, seaweed, pulses, all these types of plant-based foods. For me, veganism is like you could have a delicious rye seeded bread with just loads of roasted vegetables, seeds, tahini sauce on top.
That sounds
and there's nothing beige in there at all.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Weekend with me, Darren Grimes. The question I want to ask right now, is Britain a nation of nerds? A new study reveals that geek culture is now more popular than football in the United Kingdom, with hobbies such as science fiction, video gaming, superheroes and board games overtaking the nation's interest in footy. It's largely regarded as the national sport. Well, let's see what my panel make of that. Nigel and Claire are still with me. Claire, does this worry you? You've got a lad. Does it worry you that the lads of today are being too insular, you know, sat playing video games
it does.
painting
It
figurines?
does. Maybe, no, that's a bit of a craft thing here. But I think it's really sad that young kids would far rather sit on a chair that's incredibly comfortable, by all accounts, and they sit in the game, or even if they're on their phone for Clash of Clans or something. There's nothing immediately good about meeting other people on that. It's not like they're going to the football with their mates, or they're playing a game of rugger at the weekend or midweek. I would far rather they go out of the house or out of wherever they are, out of their halls, and went to meet other people and, you know, developed social skills. We were talking about the decline in the use of the English language, perhaps. And I think that's all part of it. I think gaming is part of it. I mean, it's really sad that there's a lot of young people out there that are now wanting to go right deeply, darkly into the realms of science fiction, etc., etc. And there's two words for that: artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
And that's the way I think the brains will work.
It's a form of escapism, really, Nigel, from the real world. And I wonder if lockdown really probably had a little bit of an impact on that with regards to not socialising and actually...
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the lockdown, the video games were a lifeline for kids during lockdown. I actually think it's just a new world. And so, yes, kids should get out and socialise, meet friends and so on. But I think that actually sitting on a computer is also a pretty good thing to do. I mean, now they could actually get career out of it, that the Defence Secretary is looking for video gamers to run our drones and various defences. So it seems to me we've grown into a whole new world where the online world and the offline world are now side by side, and the next generation needs to know both to actually get on in the world.
But I mean, it's not going to help things like the obesity stats.
Exactly, because they'll be sitting, not moving.
Well, kids aren't going to have babies if they're not meeting girls out and about, are they?
Exactly. Now, you know, the whole thing about this is really quite dark and troubling. And I think the crossover is going to be it has to be so well managed by society and families alike, of the virtual platforms and the reality
you can't change
of
it, can
real
you?
life.
You can't change it.
Well, you could maybe... I think we have to. I think parents really need to take responsibility. And I think we need to encourage both sides, but limit the screen time a lot. I think we really do.
Do you limit screen time?
My kids are grown up.
Oh, they are?
It's their choice. It's their choice what they do.
Well, you never know. You might still do it. You might have some form.
Yeah, but I do it on the tube. I'm playing on the iPhone when I'm on the tube. So, you know, in that sense, I'm a bit of a nerd.
All right, thank you very much to my panel there. You're with me, Darren Grimes, on GB News. Let's have a little check-in on that poll, shall we? Where are we at? 777,000. Well, and it's gone up 778,000 it's at now. It keeps going up and up and up, just like my GB News viewing figures. No, I'm joking. Lots more coming up on the show. First of all, though, we're going to have a look at the weather with Greg. I'm assuming it's going to say it ain't great out there, right? Yeah, windy. And that Darren Grimes isn't getting home. That's what's going to be the moral of that story. Right, I'll see you after this short break. Thanks very much.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Storm Bert continues to give strong winds and some outbreaks of heavy rain in places too, and exceptionally mild for the time of year. Huge contrast to what we had just a few days ago. Storm Bert, just sat across the north of the UK, continues to push its way eastwards. Tightly packed isobars there indicating strong winds for many of us, and heavy rain too. Rain particularly heavy across central southern parts of England and Wales as we go through this evening time. Blustery winds and frequent showers across the northwest of Scotland as well. Gusts here 60, 70 miles an hour for a time before easing a little later into the early hours. Temperatures overnight 6 or 7 degrees across the north, still holding on to double figures in the southeast. So mild for the time of year. Rain, though, initially across southeast England, but this starts to clear away. And if we look at the details for Monday morning, the centre of Bert still just sat there near Orkney and Shetland, giving strong winds, outbreaks of rain, frequent showers across much of Scotland and Northern Ireland as well. Temperatures around 6 or 7 Celsius. Brighter for Northern England into central parts of England and Wales, but a scattering of showers in the west. Still some blustery winds, and as I mentioned, the rain clearing southeast England too. So Monday for the day ahead is a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. Showers most frequent across the north and the west of the UK. It still remains quite windy here, particularly across northern Scotland, with the centre of the low just pushing its way eastwards. Colder air starts to dig in behind, and we could see some of the showers turn to sleet and snow, particularly over the higher ground. Temperatures here maximum staying in single figures, so a little nearer to average for the time of year. In the south, around 10 or 11 Celsius. As we go into the evening time, further showers pushing their way eastwards, remaining windy across the north of the UK. Perhaps another area of rain moving across into southwest England later on in the day. And for the next few days, it remains mixed. There'll be further showers and rain at times, but there will be some sunshine and temperatures nearer to average for the time of year.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's our festive treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £50,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest ever Great British giveaway. What would you spend £50,000 on in the coming year? Spectacular holidays, a brand new car, home improvements, or maybe you'd just like to save it for a special occasion. For your chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A very good afternoon. It's 2 o'clock on Sunday, the 24th of November. This is The Weekend on GB News. Storm Bert has well and truly battered Britain. Strong winds and heavy snow swept across many parts of the United Kingdom as Britain recovers from a weekend of Storm Bert. Then Sir Keir Starmer has been left bracing for a humiliating Commons debate after more than almost 790,000 people signed a petition to hold yet another general election. And stay tuned because I'll be revealing the nation's biggest shopping pet peeves. Have you been guilty of any of Britain's biggest supermarket faux pas? Well, we'll find out very shortly. I'm Darren Grimes, and this is The Weekend. Now, this show is nothing without you and your views. Let me know your thoughts on all of the stories we'll be discussing today by visiting gbnews.com/your say. Join the conversation there. Now, keeping me company on today's show is GB News senior political commentator Nigel Nelson and the broadcaster and journalist Claire Muldoon. Now, before we get stuck into today's stories, we're going to get you news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Darren, thank you. The top stories from the GB newsroom. Storm Bert has brought more than 80% of November's average monthly rainfall in less than 48 hours. More than 200 flood alerts are in place in the UK as it continues to sweep across the country. The Met Office says there's potential for fast-flowing or deep floodwater to cause danger to life today after heavy downpours and strong winds battered much of the country. A major incident's been declared in parts of South Wales due to river flooding. Homes and cars are reportedly underwater there, and a man has been rescued from a flooded car. A yellow wind warning has come into force for large parts of England, with gusts of up to 65 miles per hour expected in some places. A man died yesterday morning after a tree fell onto his car due to the weather conditions. 2 others died yesterday in crashes on the roads during the stormy weather, one in West Yorkshire and another in Northamptonshire, although it's not known if they were directly related to the conditions. Work and Pensions Secretary Liz Kendall says NATO countries are involved in a hidden cyber war with Russia. That as the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster will warn that Russia could turn the lights off and won't think twice about exploiting defence gaps in the UK. Pat McFadden is expected to give that warning to NATO members next week. In a speech, he'll urge countries to bolster cybersecurity and not underestimate the threat of cyber warfare from Russia. It follows warnings from experts last night who urged Britain to remain firm and stand strong against Vladimir Putin's threats. Shadow Levelling Up Secretary Kevin Hollinrake told GB News Labour need to increase the UK's defence spending now.
One of the highest spenders in NATO, constantly have been, but we recognise there are growing threats around the world, and that's why we committed to increase defence spending to 2.5% of GDP by 2030. And that is a commitment not matched by the Labour government. They've made some kind of general commitment to get there at some point in the future, but the threat is now, and we should bolster our defences now. We made that firm commitment. Labour should do the same.
The Justice Secretary says the state should never offer death as a service. Shabana Mahmood made the comments in a strongly worded intervention over the assisted dying bill ahead of an historic Commons vote next week. In a letter to constituents, Ms Mahmood says she was profoundly concerned by the legislation, not just for religious reasons, but because it could create a slippery slope towards death on demand. She's previously made clear she would vote against the bill, alongside Health Secretary Wes Streeting, who faced a backlash after suggesting the changes would cost the NHS more. A group of faith leaders have signed a letter opposing the bill ahead of its debate by MPs. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has declined to say whether he will back the bill, arguing that he doesn't want to pressure MPs. Chief Executive of Labour Together, Jonathan Ashworth, told GB News it's not a good idea.
There were 2 things that would concern me. First of all, I just worry about the pressure that this would put people who are in the most desperate of circumstances, the pressure they would be under. I just think it would change societal norms about that, and I'm not sure that we're ready for that as a society. And secondly, we all know that end-of-life care in the country is just not satisfactory. The hospice movement are phenomenal, but they have been underfunded for years. And I just don't want people feeling that they are a burden or that they feel their time is up and they have to make these decisions.
The Metropolitan Police says the man is fighting for his life following a stabbing on Westminster Bridge in central London. The force was called to the scene around 10:45 this morning to reports of a fight and found a man with a stab injury who was taken to hospital in critical condition. 3 people have been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder and another has been arrested on suspicion of a fray. 2 of those arrested were taken to hospital with minor facial injuries. It's understood that the incident is not being treated as terror-related. In other news, Energy Secretary Ed Miliband has called a financial package for developing nations a critical 11th hour deal at the 11th hour for the climate as the United Nations Environmental Conference drew to a close. Delegates at COP29 in Azerbaijan agreed a new climate finance target. They pledged $300 billion a year, that's £239.5 billion, to help poorer countries deal with the impacts of climate change, with rich countries leading the payments. It was feared the conference would collapse after some of the poorest nations had walked out of talks. US President Joe Biden said that while substantial work remained to be done, the conference had set an ambitious international climate finance goal. However, the African group of negotiators described it as too little too late. And Novak Djokovic has appointed Andy Murray to coach him into and through the Australian Open. Announcing the collaboration, Djokovic said he's excited to have one of his greatest rivals on the same side of the net. In a video posted on X, the Serbian said, "We had some of the most epic battles in our sport. I thought our story was over, but he said it turns out it has one final chapter." 3-time Grand Slam champion Andy Murray retired in August after exiting the men's doubles at the Paris Olympics. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More from me in half an hour.
Thanks very much, Tatiana. Let's get stuck into today's topics. Storm Bert has battered Britain with strong winds and heavy snow across many parts of the UK. The multi-hazard weather event has left 3 dead in a spate of weather-related road incidents and thousands of homes without power. And today, dozens of weather warnings remain in place as heavy rain and thawing snow could lead to floods. Now, people across the country have been urged to stay home as the weather causes travel delays across the country. Well, joining me now is the leader of Hampshire County Council, Nick Adams-King. Nick, thank you very much for your company. I mean, Hampshire has really suffered, has it? Could you just describe the impact of Storm Bert on your area?
Yeah, hi, Darren. We obviously had the fatality yesterday morning on the A34 near Winchester, where sadly a man died as a consequence of a tree coming down on his car. So clearly thoughts are with his family and his loved ones. The police are asking if anybody was around on the A34 yesterday between 7:30 and 8 o'clock. If they have any coverage from their dash cams, then to please get in touch with Hampshire Police, because it's not clear yet exactly what happened. But clearly that's the saddest thing that's happened to us around here. Plenty of trees down, lots of roads blocked, particularly in the New Forest, but Hampshire Highways have managed to clear those pretty well, and so most of the routes are open. There are flood warnings, though, on a lot of our rivers. We've had across the southwest of the county around 3 to 4 centimetres of rain just in the last 24 hours. And a lot of our rivers rise very quickly and then fall relatively quickly. So the River Blackwater, which is one of the tributaries of the Test, that has a high flood warning on it at the moment. And we're asking everyone to stay away from any routes that cross or use fords. They're the particularly dangerous places, particularly in the rural areas across the New Forest and Test Valley and East Hampshire.
And how prepared were you for this storm, Nick? I mean, how much preparation have you had to put in place in order to actually be able to weather the storm, so to speak?
So we were pretty well prepared. All of our highways teams are on standby in this kind of event. And we've flipped pretty quickly from gritting the roads and dealing with both snow and ice a couple of days ago to now high winds and rain. One of the things that we also keep an eye out for is the risk of flooding along the coast. And luckily enough, the tide isn't particularly high at this time of year. but places such as Chichester Harbour and Gosport have in the recent past suffered from tidal flooding as well, which we've been keeping an eye out for, but that looks like it's not so much of an issue this time. It's largely the river flooding that we're facing. Currently, much of the flooding is across farmland, so we are able to deal with that, and it's a matter of just keeping the roads open and keeping people away from the routes that are at risk as a consequence of, as I said, that flooding around fords. Otherwise, hopefully, we seem to have got away without any housing being flooded at the minute. Most of those people that live in the routes or live in the areas where that flooding occurs quite regularly are pretty well prepared. And I know that there are people, certainly around the area where I live here, which is close to the River Blackwater, who have pumps in place ready to pump out any of the flood water that begins to head towards them.
All right, well, we'll keep our fingers crossed for you. Leader of the Hampshire County Council, Nick Adams-King there. Thank you very much for that insight. Now, Sir Keir Starmer has been left bracing for a humiliating Commons debate after more than, I think it's actually over 800,000 now, have signed a petition to hold yet another general election. There it is, 807,000. Now, despite going to the polls 5 times in the last 10 years, hundreds of thousands want another election after a petition was launched accusing the Prime Minister of rolling back on his manifesto commitments. Now, joining me is GB News' political correspondent, Olivia Utley. Olivia, I mean, I doubt Sir Keir Starmer is unable to get out of his bed in number 10 Downing Street, if indeed he is in number 10, because I don't know about you, Olivia, but I think he's abroad more than he's in Britain. But the fact of the matter is, he ain't going to be too frightened by this, but it does show discontent in the nation.
Well, absolutely, Darren. I mean, as you say, nothing is really going to come of this. General elections aren't organised in this country by petition, and Keir Starmer will argue, understandably, that, you know, millions of people voted for him back in July, and by comparison, 800 and whatever it is, 1,000 people signing this petition isn't that big a number at all. That said, it's not a great look for the Prime Minister. He won an enormous majority back in July. It was just 4 seats short of Tony Blair's majority back in 1997, and yet already it feels as though he is very, very unpopular, not just because of this petition, but if you look at the polls as well, his popularity is now in the negative ratings, very, very different to where Tony Blair was sitting in 1997, who obviously went on to win 2 more general elections after that. Another thing is that since that general election back in July, Labour has lost 80% of the council by-elections that it's been fighting. That is almost unprecedented and shows, again, the level of discontent in the UK with the Labour government. Now, what exactly do people feel Labour have done wrong? Well, one of the big issues is this idea that the Labour Party has reversed on its manifesto commitments. Labour promised in the run-up to the general election that it wouldn't increase tax on working people. Now, they defined working people very specifically to mean wouldn't be raising taxes on VAT, income tax or national insurance. You could technically say that Labour have stuck to that promise in that national insurance hasn't risen for the average working person, but Rachel Reeves in her budget announced that national insurance would be going up for employers. Now, that will very directly affect ordinary workers because those employers were already making decisions either not to hire new people or else, more worryingly, to get rid of staff that they've already got, especially in areas like retail and care homes where the margins are very small and they just can't afford a big rise to national insurance contributions. That is affecting ordinary people at home and people are not happy about it at all. The other thing, of course, is that winter fuel payment. From pretty much now, older people won't get that winter fuel payment unless they're receiving pension credits. Now, that is hitting people very, very hard, particularly as Ofgem have announced twice in the past few months that they will be raising the price cap on energy prices. So energy is going to go up by about £100 a year next year for the average household. People are really not happy about that as well and are blaming Labour very squarely for it. So there is discontent in the country. country. Keir Starmer will probably now face a debate on this. Normally when an online petition like this, reaches about 100,000 signatures, there is a debate in the Commons. It'll probably be in Westminster Hall, not in the main chamber of the House of Commons, which is sort of more minor, but I'm sure it'll get quite a lot of traction, quite a lot of news headlines. I'm sure we'll be covering it, and I expect lots of other news organisations will too.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned that pension credit form, Olivia. It doesn't help that the form itself is longer than War and Peace. You know, it's a very labyrinth-esque form to actually navigate. But, Olivia, thank you very much for that insight. That's our political correspondent, Olivia, utterly brilliant as ever. Let's see what my brilliant panel make of this. We've got Nigel Nelson still here, and we've got Claire Muldoon, of course, here as well. Now, Claire, if you look at, if we can just get up that heat map from the United Kingdom, because I didn't explain what this is. So this actually shows in the dark red are the parts of the country which have the highest numbers of signatures toward this petition. And it's primarily England and Wales. Do you have any inkling why that might be? You know, Scotland obviously has more representatives that aren't either the Labour Party or the Conservatives. But Wales, I mean, if you look at Poland, Reform are doing very well in Wales right now, according to the polling. England and Wales, that, I think, actually would also accurately describe, in the dark, bright red, it would describe the temperature of people's anger, I think, as well.
Well, no, yes. And what we found was during this last election that people were more likely to vote for a party like Reform. And I think it was quite right that we can say that Labour didn't win this election. Everyone was voting against the existing outgoing Conservative Party. Now, my concern is, going forward, and I don't think we will have another general election soon. I don't think this signature, this petition would actually grant that. However, I think for the next election, what the Conservatives and indeed the Labour Party must watch out for is the fact of Reform chasing at their heels. And these temperature gauges in the country will not change to Conservative blue. They'll actually change to Reform blue, because these parts of England, especially the north of England and Wales, which was already a Labour government anyway, which was actually a devolved government as well, as Scotland have had with the SNP, tragically, disastrously. People, actually, from what I can see on social media as well, and the responses to what I've said, people generally are saying, look, this is a shout-out to just show how angry we actually are.
You know, when you opened your mouth there with I did not know why you were going to go with that. I thought, Claire.
No need for the dump button.
No. Well, that's choice words as well, isn't it? Right, Nigel, looking at that map, it actually mirrors the Brexit vote as well, actually.
Yes, it does rather. Yeah, that was quite interesting about it. I think that you're absolutely right. A lot of people are very angry about this government, and they've only been here for 4 months. But I do think that no matter what had happened, they'd be angry about any government. Rishi Sunak seems to have called the election early because he basically got fed up and things weren't going to improve. He would have faced massive tax rises had he got back. So what Keir Starmer did was going to happen anyway. Question whether it would have been 40 billion or 20 billion or whatever, but people will still be hit.
Is that the black hole in which you refer to?
Part of the black hole, partly to bolster up public services, which have been neglected for the last 14 years. So it was two things there, but people did get hit who didn't expect to be hit. I understand that, but as Olivia just said, they'd promised not to raise the main taxes, so the majority of people actually escaped.
I mean, Claire, the Tories, were they here, would say, well, hang on a minute, you know, we put record sums into the NHS. The NHS has never had more money.
Well,
so
that's
you can't
true.
argue.
That's true. And I think the soundbite that we had from Starmer about the IHT and the inheritance tax for farmers, was it someone that actually said it was for the NHS? The money we're going to get from that's going to hit the NHS. And I'm sorry, I'm fed up with the NHS being used as a political football in this country. It's kicking the can down the road. Nothing has actually been done to satiate waiting lists, GP appointments, face-to-face appointments. It is ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous.
Defenders of the farm and the inheritance tax changes would say, well, hang on, farmers use public services as well, right? They use the NHS, so they need a better NHS as well, which I think is entirely disingenuous given the amount of money that it's actually going to raise.
It's completely disingenuous, but also, back to the farmers really, they do everything for us that we need. They feed us, they give us milk, they do a lot for us, and I think this is just another trampled piece of legislation that Rachel from Accounts just thought of.
But if you don't take the money from the farmers, do you take more money from older people, or do you hit GPs harder who are having to pay extra national insurance?
I think we just need better reform, Nigel. I think we need far better reform. If we were talking about the NHS is on its knees. The reason it's on its knees is because it's not managed properly. It really isn't.
But that's the whole point of the 10-year plan coming in. You've got the money on one side to actually make it work, and reform of the NHS to make it better.
You've got too many trusts. You know that the NHS actually procure their drugs for their hospitals individually. I mean, basic economics would say you've got bigger purchasing power if you do it all together collectively, and then go to big pharma.
Those are the reforms that we're talking about. Those are the things.
Well, I've not heard that.
Well, it's in the 10-year plan. I mean, there's a whole host of things. For a start, NHS computers are way out of date, so the idea is to digitalise it. None of this is going to happen overnight, but you have got that reform coming. And Wes Streeting has asked the public for ideas that you might include. You might write in and say, how about that? It's a good example of something that would avoid waste in the NHS.
The problem with that, though, is the political term as well, and I think everyone's heading towards a general election in, 2028?
29 would be the next one.
So they'll start canvassing for that then. So they won't actually have enough time to implement their 10-year plan.
Well, that's why they want 2 terms.
They really, really want.
Well, I mean,
Christmas comes
according
early.
to that poll, it's unlikely that 2 terms are coming, but that's what they're after. So, you can't do it in 5 years.
Of course you can't.
You can't do it in 5 years. The NHS is such a huge organisation. To reform it will take time. The 10-year plan ought to run its course. We don't know if it'll work. We don't know if it'll be better.
Do you know what? I think, actually, if Keir Starmer didn't appear as robotic as he does, and if I think they had a decent comms team from the start, they might actually have given a bit of hope to people, and I think people might actually be more for them. No one wants a government not to succeed. It's not within my best interest to sit here and say how anti-Labour government I am, because I do want the country to do well.
Yes, well, that's it. And, I think, actually, the Welsh elections next year, as in the Welsh Assembly, actually, they will set a marker as to how the entire term, the Parliament, goes for the Labour Party.
Yes, I mean, they're really important. I mean, so local elections next year.
Which they've lost 80% on.
And let's see how reform do.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. All right, Nigel, thank you. And Claire, of course, thank you very much to you too. For all the best analysis and opinion on that story and more, you can go to our website. We're at gbnews.com. You're with me, Darren Grimes, on GB News. I thank you very much for your company. Let's have a little check-in on that poll, shall we? 829,000. Wowee. Right, now, President Putin, he's ready, apparently, to cripple the United Kingdom. That's according to Pat McFadden from Labour. He warns that the Russian president, could launch a wave of cyber attacks. All of that and more to come. You're with GB News, we're Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Millions are struggling to stay warm with the wet weather, the cost of living and, of course, cuts to fuel payments.
Yes, winter is fast approaching, so it's crucial to find cost-effective ways to save on your energy expenses whilst staying reasonably warm.
So joining us to provide advice on heating your home, or at least staying warm somehow, is one of the leading voices on lowering energy bills, Nick Miles. And you are very welcome in here this morning. I mean, a lot of people say, well, in the olden days, you just used to put on an extra jumper. But actually, it's more serious than that, isn't it? What is the best way, the most cost-effective way, to keep your home warm?
Some of the bigger things is we need to do more things on insulating our properties, but actually sometimes, it can be simple things like turning down a thermostat. Those that have got the luxury of being able to afford energy bills and keep their homes on the thermostat a bit too high. If you just turn it down by 1 simple degree, as long as you keep it between 18 and 22 degrees, can save up to 5 to 10% of your energy bill. So that's a kind of a very simple way of doing things. But, you know, it can be other little tips and tricks you can do as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I always get it when people say about this, but like 18 degrees is not warm for a house.
No, and it's twofold actually. It's that kind of relative temperature, but also it's the kind of drafts and things you have in your house. So it's the comfort factor. So what we have a lot of old properties in our country. You've got some 8 million hard-to-treat properties built before World War II that have got poor insulation, but also very, very drafty. So it's the temperature and it's the kind of the draftiness of them that kind of keeps us uncomfortable.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss my big opinion. Mark meets and my take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the weekend with me, Darren Grimes. On that NHS conversation that we were having just before the break and the reason why Labour needs to put up taxes, Sean, who works for the NHS as a paramedic, has written in and he says, Darren, I assure you the way it's managed is crazy. The amount of people on the sick for the smallest reason is amazing. All on full pay. The amount of nurses I know who've literally just started their career are now in full pay maternity leave. The amount of managers who take friends away on spa weekends and charge it to the NHS as a meeting. I even made a complaint to an internal complaints procedure through that procedure and nothing was done. Just amazes me what I see daily. And Paul is in well, I won't say what area it's in actually in case he gets into bother, but yeah, quite alarming. Now, speaking of alarming, Russia, they could apparently turn the lights off. Oh, not if Ed Miliband gets there first. And they won't think twice about exploiting defence gaps in the UK. That's the warning the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, Pat McFadden, is expected to tell NATO members next week. In a speech, he'll urge countries to bolster cybersecurity and not underestimate the threat of cyber warfare from Russia. It follows warnings from experts last night who urged Britain to remain firm and stand strong against Vladimir Putin's threats. Well, let's see what my panel make of Bad Vlad. Nigel and Claire are still with me in the studio. Nigel, how much of a threat is this? How worried shall we be? Because, I mean, it strikes me that they've shown that they can't win in Ukraine, not completely anyway. They've captured territory, of course, and I don't doubt that the Ukrainian people feel somewhat aggrieved in large part, especially all the lives that have been lost. But as far as a threat to the UK is concerned, it's got a lot of people scratching their heads saying, why are we involved in the first place? What say you?
Well, I mean, we're involved in the first place to stop Russia's aggression. And if Putin had been allowed to take Ukraine, Estonia could have been next. You then look at Poland. These are NATO countries. We're then into the realms of a world war. So I understand why we're supporting Ukraine. I understand why we're now allowing our missiles to be fired deep into, well, not that deep, but into into Russia, we've got Donald Trump coming along.
Exactly, Nigel. So on that point, does that not... the exacerbation of the war by firing these missiles and actually it's a intensification of Ukraine's assault in Russian territory.
That's right.
Now, is this wrong to do this to try and, some would argue, leave a legacy for President Biden, perhaps, at a time when President Trump is going to come in, and even President Zelensky has said the war will end much sooner than it would have done had President Trump not been elected?
Yeah, and what Zelensky needs is a negotiating position. This is the direction of travel at the moment. We don't know exactly what Trump is going to do, but the reason that Zelensky has sent troops into Russia to fight on Russian territory and take Russian territory, the reason for sending missiles in is so that if it does come to the negotiating table in the new year when Trump becomes president, he is in a stronger position than he is now not to give away Ukrainian land to Russia.
I mean, on that point, Claire, one, how worried are you about the threat Russia poses to turning the lights off and things like that? I said Ed Miliband's doing a good enough job himself. But on that point of our involvement and using, basically allowing the use of these high-tech missiles that can penetrate deep within the border of Russia, how sensible is it to do that at this time?
Well, I don't think it's hugely sensitive, whilst I take Nigel's very pragmatic point about, you know, bringing the negotiations forward in January when Trump will become the president of the States. I think this has been a Biden proxy war in the Ukraine. I've not been a big supporter of the Ukraine at all from start, and I think Zelensky is, you know, I think he's got blood in his hands as well, and I think what we're going to find is that a lot of disenfranchised young Ukrainians are going now to be armed up, and they're going to be sent, you know, they're going to leave the Ukraine, end up somewhere else, and then conform maybe some more atrocities because of the PTSD, because of the limitations and the absolute war that they've been engaged in. Now, I think it's a stalemate between Russia and the Ukraine at the moment. And I do think they do need to sit around the table, and I do think a negotiation, a deal has to be struck. And I think they have to be amenable to actually making it work, because this cannot go on. We cannot keep funding it when we've got the issues that we have in this country.
It's true, very true. All right. Thank you very much to the panel there. You're with me, Darren Grimes, on GB News. Let's have a little check-in on that poll. 845,000. Gosh, gosh, gosh. Plenty more coming up on the show, my friends. First of all, your news with Tatiana.
Darren, thank you. Some breaking news to bring you first this hour, that police say a body has been found in the search for Brian Perry after he went missing while walking his dog near to a river in North Wales. The 75-year-old went missing yesterday as floodwaters rose in the area, with the Coast Guard and North Wales Police involved in the search for him. More on this breaking story as we get it. And that as a major incident has been declared in South Wales after dozens of homes, businesses and a number of schools were affected by flooding during Storm Bert. The storm has brought more than 80% of November's average monthly rainfall in less than 48 hours. More than 200 flood alerts are in place in the UK as it continues to sweep across the country. A yellow wind warning has come into force for large parts of England, with gusts of up to 65 miles per hour expected in some places. A man died yesterday morning after a tree fell onto his car due to those weather conditions. 2 others died in yesterday's crashes on the road due to that stormy weather. Elsewhere, Work and Pensions Secretary Liz Kendall says NATO countries are involved in a hidden cyber war with Russia. That as the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster will warn that Russia could turn the lights off and won't think twice about exploiting defence gaps in the UK. Pat McFadden is expected to give the warning to NATO members next week. In a speech, he'll urge countries to bolster cybersecurity and not underestimate the threat of cyber warfare from Russia. It follows warnings from experts last night who urged Britain to remain firm and stand strong against Vladimir Putin's threats. And the Justice Secretary says the state should never offer death as a service. Shabana Mahmood made those comments in a strongly worded intervention over the assisted dying bill ahead of an historic Commons vote next week. In a letter to constituents, Ms Mahmood said she was profoundly concerned by the legislation, not just for religious reasons, but also because it could create a slippery slope towards death on demand. She's previously made clear she would vote against the bill, alongside Health Secretary Wes Streeting, who faced a backlash after suggesting the changes would cost the NHS more. A group of faith leaders have signed a letter opposing the bill ahead of its debate by MPs. Sir Keir Starmer has declined to say whether he will back the bill, arguing that he doesn't want to pressure MPs. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More news in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Tatiana. Now, there's plenty more coming up on today's show, but before I tell you what we've got lined up, Nana Aqua's show is on later at 3 o'clock, and she joins us now. Nana, everyone needs their Nana. What have you got coming up for us on your show?
Well, they do need their Nana, and Sir Keir Starmer may need his Nana soon. I mean, we've got our eye on that poll now as it's creeping up. And during my show, I'm asking, well, do you want another general election? Did we ask for all of this? There seems to be nobody that's happy with it. Coming up in my interview, I'll be speaking to a farmer who's very unhappy with the inheritance tax rate. I'm going to ask whether you think it's time for the government to U-turn on it. And it's very sad because he's also been hit with the flooding because he can't get to some of his livestock because they're trapped in one of the outhouses because of the flooding. So it's very, very sad. And loads of things coming up as well. Also assisted dying. Do you support it? So there's loads to come. Ben Habib will be joining us too, so I know
Brilliant.
a lot of people think he's very good on the eye.
All right. Thank you very much, Nana. We look forward to that. Now, coming up on this show, 55% of Brits say they would consider assisted dying if they were diagnosed with a terminal illness. Should assisted dying be allowed in the UK? This is dividing a lot of opinion on our Your Say page, so let me know what you think, but we'll find out what the panel thinks shortly. All of that and more to come. I'm Darren Grimes, and you're with GB News, we're Britain's news channel.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Storm Bert continues to give strong winds, outbreaks of heavy rain across parts of the country, and it's exceptionally mild for some as well, 16, 17 Celsius this Sunday morning. Bert sat to the northwest, tightly packed isobars indicating strong winds across the country and heavy rain in places too. Rain particularly heavy across southwest England into parts of Wales, the Midlands, into eastern England as well through the day ahead. To the southeast of this, some bright or sunny spells behind it as well. Some dry interludes before we see blustery showers across Northern Ireland, northwest Scotland. Here the winds gusting by the afternoon 60, 70 miles an hour. Elsewhere as well, gusts of 50, 60 miles an hour possible. So an unsettled afternoon to come and temperatures well above where they should be for the time of year. So let's take a look at that rain for the evening time. For those travelling, there could be some local disruption across central southern parts of England and Wales. Flooding becoming a real concern. Brighter skies across parts of Northern Ireland, Scotland as the sun sets here, clearer spells, and then a mixture of blustery showers, strong winds across the northwest of Scotland. Temperatures here 9 to 11 Celsius. Stays wet and windy into the evening and overnight as well. This weather system only slowly pushes its way southeastwards, transferring into southeast England during the early hours. Elsewhere, blustery showers continue to move in as the storm system only slowly pushes its way eastwards, and showers still pretty relentless across the northwest. Temperatures coming down here overnight, 6 or 7 Celsius, still mild in the south, 9 or 10 degrees. Weather system gives some rain initially across southeast England. This starts to clear away, it brightens up, but a blustery day for everyone. Sunny spells, scattered showers. Showers most frequent across the north and the west, and some colder air starting to return across Scotland. We'll see the showers turn back to snow here. Temperatures 6, 7 degrees. Cooler in the south as well, highs of 11.
Join me, Nana Aqua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, you didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Welcome back to the weekend with me, Darren Grimes. Now, as I said just before the break there, this is an issue that gets many of you pretty split, I would argue, but the country doesn't appear to be split on the issue. A poll of more than 15,000 people found that the public is almost 5 times as likely to support assisted dying as not. The poll by think tank More in Common says 65% are in favour and only 13% opposed. Nearly a quarter were undecided, with 55% of those surveyed saying they would consider assisted dying if they were diagnosed with a terminal illness themselves. But the Justice Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, who opposes the bill, says the UK is on a slippery slope towards death on demand. Well, let's see what my panel make of this. Nigel Nelson and Claire Muldoon are still with me in the studio. Claire, I started with Nigel last time, so I'll start with you now. Shabana Mahmood there making an intervention into this discussion. And as Justice Secretary, she could well be getting a lot of people saying, well, hang on, you know, my relative was coerced into this. And, you know, who knows what the repercussions could be. But is your view, Claire, that this is a slippery slope that will lead to some unintended consequences?
Yes, and I think we only have to look at the law as it exists in Canada and in Holland, and we can see that what is repurposed then will be repurposed here as well. Now, I have to say that as a practicing Catholic, my views are, you know, they are faith-based, but they are based as well on the vulnerable of society, in which I think the laws of this land ought to be there to protect at all times. I think it's great that that the party whip has been removed on this vote, making it a free vote. I would not like to think that anyone that was an elected MP of this country could not vote with their conscience on something as grave as this. It is a huge piece of legislation that, if it goes through, I think will be the thin edge of the wedge in order for people to be coerced into dying. And I think the threshold will become much lower year in, year out. We saw that with Steele's abortion bill, which started off, everyone said, had bolts and braces to it.
Yes.
But now it's then being changed to us having one of the most lenient abortion laws in Europe, in fact. And I think with assisted dying, I think our courts are very much uptaken at the moment with other cases. So I don't know where the time is going to come for the High Court judges to sit and actually make the decision on whether or not the 2 independent doctors that have seen the patient, have listened to the patient, can actually judge, yes, that patient fulfills all the criteria for them now to administer themselves with assisted death. And the other side of it, Darren, which is hugely important, is the side of the medical staff who actually have signed petitions. We're talking about petitions today. About 5,000 of them have actually signed saying, no, we're not in favour of this at all.
Exactly. That's a crucial point, and they'll be the ones having to administer the drugs, of course. Nigel, on this point, as I mentioned, the inbox here is split on it, but there are a lot of people disagreeing with Claire, saying, hang on, if I end up terminally ill, I want dignity in my death and I want the right to choose when I go. Which side of the coin do you fall on?
I'm afraid I'm on the undecided coin. If I was an MP at the moment, I would want to listen to the debate in the House of Commons on Friday. I hope the Commons rises to the occasion. They often do in issues like this, before I actually make up my mind. I've got some of the same concerns that Claire has got. I think that the slippery slope argument is a very persuasive one against this legislation going through. If it becomes commonplace for assisted dying, I think that the checks and balances would gradually whittle away, and the protections with it. So I'm uncomfortable with it. Equally, I take the point about public opinion. Ever since the 1950s, the public have been saying assisted dying should actually happen. But it is a conscience vote. It is down to MPs. Last time they were given the chance in 2015, they voted overwhelmingly to block this legislation.
Just very briefly, Nigel, how much of an important intervention was Gordon Brown's yesterday as far as the Labour Parliamentary Party is concerned?
I think hugely important. It's a very moving piece about the death of his daughter. Shabana Mahmood, I would say, was probably more important. I think that she makes a case that MPs will take much more seriously because the slippery slope argument will be the final decider.
And has Shabana said that that wasn't faith-based? Like, you know, Claire gave
Yes, she has, yeah. It's not a faith-based thing, that this is purely a conscience thing. And indeed, that's why it should be a free vote. That's why MPs should vote with their consciences.
All right, OK. Thank you, Claire, and thank you, Nigel, there as well. You're with me, Darren Grimes, on GB News. Let's have a look at that poll. What's it at? It's almost at 867,000.
Gone up over 100,000 since we've been on air.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty incredible, isn't it? Right, loads more coming up on the show today. I'll be revealing the nation's biggest shopping pet peeves. Have you been guilty of any of these biggest supermarket faux pas? Well, we'll find out what they are and whether or not you're one of the fiends doing them. All of that and more to come. You're with GB News, we're Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Online dating apps are still the go-to for millions of British adults, with 1 in 10 using them to look for a romantic connection.
Yes, are you one of them? Let us know. But with many apps introducing subscription fees and complex algorithms, the world of online dating has never been harder to navigate. So who better to join us to discuss this than Mr. Tinder himself, Stefan Pierre Tomlin. You have been dubbed Britain's best-looking eligible bachelor.
Yeah, so this happened back in 2016. Got an email from Tinder, and it was like, "You're the most swiped man on Tinder."
So just explain to us, for viewers who don't know, what is swiping? What does that mean on Tinder?
Yeah, so on Tinder, the app, if you swipe left, that means you don't like the person in front of you, and if you swipe to the right, that means you like that person.
Do you mind still being associated with that? It's a good thing.
Well, I mean, yeah, it made me who I am now, and I love sharing how I was successful, and now I'm like a dating expert.
What's your situation now? Are you with anyone? Are you still single, paying the bill?
So I'm seeing someone at the minute. Things are going well, and I'm a dating expert, so I'm always giving advice to people.
Does she know your title of most swiped?
Of course, who doesn't? It's quite hard. It's quite hard being the most swiped man on Tinder because you get a label on you. So I find it harder than anyone else, to be honest.
And where did you meet her? That's the big question.
At an event.
So not on Tinder?
Not on Tinder, ironically.
So for all that trouble online, it's actually a real life rendezvous. Which,
I mean, I have met people on Tinder in the past, and it has worked. Well, it didn't work, but yeah.
I need to know how to do the famous Stefan Smolder.
That camera is not a camera. That is your best friend, that's your lover. So you really smiles from the camera, so it goes like this.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the
GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the weekend with me, Darren Grimes. Claire's got my mouth watering talking about truffle-flavoured roasted nuts. Not a euphemism, my friends, I promise. Now, some more serious comments you've been writing in. Mike says, I would have gone along with assisted dying. I've seen people die horribly myself. Up until recently, though, and now I don't trust anybody, government, judiciary, even doctors. We all know how it will go. This year it's the winter allowance, next year something a bit more sinister. And Brian says Labour are supportive of assisted dying. Just look at what they've done to the United Kingdom. And Janet says, not sure how I feel about it. A comfortable death is what it should be. Shabana Mahmood has a point. It could well be a slippery slope. Let's fund hospices, make people as comfortable as possible. Janet, on that point, the national insurance increase on employers really impacting hospices because they've got to compete with increased care worker payments as well. It's very difficult. Right, now, I've got to ask you, you greedy beggars at home, do you eat food in the supermarket before you pay for it? Well, Nigel Nelson and Claire Muldoon have both just admitted to me they do. If you have, then you're guilty, apparently, of one of Britain's most hated shopping habits. This is according to an etiquette expert. There are several habits that Brits should avoid if you don't want to annoy anyone on your weekly shop, including you turning your trolley in an aisle, blocking an aisle while you chat to a friend, not in, a greeting shop staff or whatever else. So what do you think of that? Do any of those annoy you on your weekly trip to the shops? For about 4 years, between the ages of 18 to 22. Thank you. I worked in Marks and Spencer, and I never had anyone doing that. Maybe is it a shop thing? You feel more able to just eat your.
Well, no, I just get hungry. You see all this food there, and it's usually a chocolate bar or something like that. And so before I've actually got to the checkout,
you do pay for it though.
Yeah, I give the wrapper to the wrapper at the checkout, and they cash it up. So
you don't believe in delayed gratification?
Absolutely not.
I think the way we shop's changed completely now. We used to go for our big shop with big trolleys to big supermarkets. That's fine. The smaller branches, they're called locals now, of the big supermarkets. You couldn't even get a trolley in the entrance, so it'll be basket you'll have. So a lot of that report is really meaningless. And now a lot of us actually get our internet shopping brought home, delivered home, because it fits in with lifestyles, times, etc., etc. However, in saying all of that, well, it depends where you are. If you're in a big enough place, you can. Do it. I mean, there's people who can't even drive. What does get on my wick, though, is people standing chatting with their trolleys turned to each other and having a gay old time. It's just ridiculous. And exactly, when you can't get past.
What about talking to shop staff? Like, do you speak to the person at the till?
At our local supermarket, I know most of them, so we're bound to. I mean, I think that the things that I apparently irritate my wife hugely because I get distracted in an aisle by looking at something. She's 3 aisles away by the time I get back. And I also obsessively look at sell-by dates and use-by dates. She irritates me because I don't like carrots, but our trolley seems to be piled high with them so she can feed the horse.
I see. Right, fair enough. What annoys you? Apart from that?
Everything. No, that's not true. No, we've got a wonderful M&S actually very close to here. The staff are wonderful and they're so smiley and so happy. You can't help but, pass it on and say hi and whatever.
I do remember a girl came through with a muffin and she devoured the muffin whilst it was on the trolley belt. The trolley belt, the belt of the actual
you don't have those now, though.
No. Well, and she did it because she was having a complete collapse and she needed the sugar to get her back up again. again.
Yeah.
But I immediately judged her and thought, you greedy beggar. I didn't say that, obviously. And then I felt terribly bad. So just never judge a book by its cover.
Absolutely right. Yep.
And other shops, by the way, are available other than Marks and Spencer. We've given lots of... What's yours?
Waitrose.
Oh, there we are. See? Competition in the middle-class market of retailers, it seems to be. Yes, Aldi, you know, I've got good words to say about them as well.
But they're not often in high streets, though. They're often out of town.
Yeah,
so it's quite difficult to get to.
Yeah, good car parks.
Often need... Well, I don't
Right,
drive.
OK, Claire and Nigel, thank you very much for your company this afternoon. I hope you enjoy the rest of it. And to you too. You've been with me, Darren Grimes, on GB News. Just before we go, what's this election? 883,000 of you calling for a general election. Thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. Your Nana's up next. First of all, though, we're going to get a wee look at the horrible weather with Greg.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Storm Bert continues to give strong winds and some outbreaks of heavy rain in places too, and exceptionally mild for the time of year. Huge contrast to what we had just a few days ago. Storm Bert, just sat across the north of the UK, continues to push its way eastwards. Tightly packed isobars there indicating strong winds for many of us, and heavy rain too. Rain particularly heavy across central southern parts of England and Wales as we go through this evening time. Blustery winds and frequent showers across the northwest of Scotland as well. Gusts here 60-70 miles an hour for a time before easing a little later into the early hours. Temperatures overnight 6 or 7 degrees across the north, still holding on to double figures in the southeast. So mild for the time of year. Rain though initially across southeast England, but this starts to clear away. And if we look at the details for Monday morning, the centre of Bert still just sat there near Orkney and Shetland, giving strong winds, outbreaks of rain, frequent showers across much of Scotland and Northern Ireland as well. Temperatures around 6 or 7 Celsius. Brighter for Northern England into central parts of England and Wales, but a scattering of showers in the west. Still some blustery winds, and as I mentioned, the rain clearing southeast England too. So Monday for the day ahead is a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. Showers most frequent across the north and the west of the UK. It still remains quite windy here, particularly across northern Scotland with the centre of the low just pushing its way eastwards. Colder air starts to dig in behind and we could see some of the showers turn to sleet and snow, particularly over the higher ground. Temperatures here maximum staying in single figures, so a little nearer to average for the time of year in the south, around 10 or 11 Celsius. As we go into the evening time, further showers pushing their way eastwards, remaining windy across the north of the UK. Perhaps another area of rain moving across into southwest England later on in the day. And for the next few days, it remains mixed. There'll be further showers and rain at times, but there will be some sunshine and temperatures nearer to average for the time of year.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Imagine getting a call to tell you that you've won £50,000 in tax-free cash, our biggest cash prize of the year.
Oh my God.
That's a big surprise.
Oh my God. This is amazing.
I'm in shock. That is absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
For your chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, it's just gone 3 o'clock. Welcome to GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Acquia. And for the next few hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me for the next few hours, former Deputy Co-Leader of Reform UK, Ben Habib, and also founder of and CEO of Youth Vote UK, Alexander Cairns. Coming up, Storm Bert continues to batter Britain. Strong winds, heavy snow all across the major parts of this country. We'll be discussing that. I'll be joined by a fifth-generation farmer as well. He'll be discussing all about the flooding. Then, of course, I've got a poll up today talking about assisted dying. But as the Justice Secretary brands the bill a slippery slope to death on demand, which way will the Commons vote? Hundreds of thousands of people as well have signed a petition calling for another general election. It comes against the endless backlash of Labour's controversial budget. So, is Sir Keir Starmer out of his depth? Plus, of course, COP29, $300 billion, a massive event in Baku, over 33 hours as the agreement fell well short of the $1.3 trillion. Is this a betrayal? And for Fox's sake, no, that is a fox, animal rights activists demand this historic Sly Old Fox pub in Birmingham changes its name. Before we get started, let's get your latest news with Katie Bowen.
Nana, thank you and good afternoon. It's just gone 3 o'clock. These are your latest headlines from the GB newsroom. Some breaking news this hour. Police say a body has been found in the search for Brian Perry after he went missing while walking his dog near a river in North Wales. The 75-year-old went missing yesterday as floodwaters rose in the area, with the Coast Guard and North Wales Police involved in the search for him. That comes as a major incident has been declared in South Wales after dozens of homes, businesses and a number of schools were affected by flooding during